everybody. This is Lynn Marape and Alan Walker. Welcome to the FinTalk Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things FinTech and YDPay. Today, Alan will be talking to us about the importance of financial inclusion in a global context, focusing on underserved populations and exploring how YDPay can provide access to financial services. So, definitely a great topic to discuss, especially seeing how Africa-oriented YDPay is. So, jumping right into it, financial inclusion has been a major goal for a lot of governments, particularly in developing countries such as ours. Why, in your view, is financial inclusion important, and how important is it?
Yeah, so geez, it's really is a great question, and I'm glad you mentioned how passionate we are about it. It really is core to our DNA. It's core to really everything we're doing. I think looking at financial inclusion from a top-down approach, so we'll start at what the governments have done, but also what they haven't done. And how that's created a gap in the market for the fintech providers like YDPay. But ultimately, governments would love, in a truly, happy everyone singing around the campfire kumbaya moment. I believe that governments do want the best for their citizens. I think short of votes and everything we read in the papers, I think ultimately people get into governance to really help, the common man. And talking about financial inclusion, is many governments do attempt, and I use the word attempt very loosely, to allow financial inclusion. But when it comes to actually wielding the big government stick, they shy quite far away from that. A very good example is, just looking at South Africa, and I understand that there are costs to be borne by the service providers and the banks. But as a government, you can't promote financial inclusion where we have our big five banks making trillions of rands of profit. We've got our mobile network operators with some of the highest data costs in the world. And I know there've been a number of projects to bring the internet to everyone out there, but ultimately many of those have failed, and it's consistently the same around the rest of Africa. We have some of the highest financial costs globally, and I understand there's a lot that's out of our hands, but it's very hard to compete individually, even as a homeowner, where my friends and family living in the US have had 1% home loans for the last 10, 15 years, and we're on the other side of 12.5%. So financial inclusion, it's a very big and challenge, but what this has meant is for the African landscape is it's really opened up the doors to a number of financial technology providers, where through the use of clever programming and clever algorithms, we get access to the same level of even something as simple as compliance requirements that the big banks have, without the 20,000 people working force, without the need to have a massive head office in the middle of the financial districts. So we get, we get put in the ring, to put it bluntly, with the biggest banks, but we have access to the exact same gloves. We have access to the exact same, call it boots and shoes. We're almost on a bit of a level playing field to a degree, but close enough. And we get access to the global financial markets as well. So what this means from a financial inclusivity perspective is the fintech providers are able to bring some of those financial instruments and financial, call it tools, to somebody that is operating well below a poverty line, where a banking fee of $10 means the difference between them eating that night or not.
Yeah.
So the fintech providers and the digital payment gateways like YDPay, we have the ability to significantly reduce that. And because of the ability to innovate, the ability to move into a very different direction very rapidly and bring extreme agility to the market, means if something new comes up that's cheaper, better, faster, more secure, it takes us maybe a day or two to go down that route, whereas the banks and the larger financial providers may take years and sometimes even decades, like we've seen with cryptocurrency, where cryptocurrency is probably into its 10th, 11th year now. Only now are we seeing some of the big banks being open to offering you the ability to open a cryptocurrency account. So that ability to move very quickly, the ability to have seamless operational expenditure means that those cost savings are directly brought to the end user. And specifically speaking of Africa, this is where my passion lies. This is where the DNA of the group lies as well. Africa is synonymous for our migratory work behavior. Here in South Africa in particular, we're an incredibly divergent bunch. You will walk down the street and chat to somebody from Zimbabwe. You'll chat to somebody from Kenya. You'll chat to somebody from Ghana, and you haven't even got to the bus stop yet. We're an incredibly divergent bunch. And more importantly, it's, we've seen a massive exodus of highly skilled labor. Our schooling system, our educational systems on this continent are very, very good, which means that somebody in Africa can migrate to a European or maybe an American country, earn 10 or 20 times what their local currency would allow them in the market space. But, leaving the continent also means you're leaving friends and family behind. And that's resulted in a massive diaspora payment ecosystem where a lot of these communities, a lot of these families will highly educate one or a few members of their family. The parents and the grandparents wouldn't have had access to, forget about financial inclusion, just stable educational systems. So, you'll send out your son or your daughter who's now a qualified doctor. Both parents are blue collar workers or low skill workers. That doctor will go out to the UK, become a neurosurgeon, and then send I don't want to say significant amount, but in local currency, a significant amount of currency back home to support their friends, to support their families, and to help often the next generation come through as well. So, if I came through a government schooling system, I leave, go work in the UK, send money home, it might mean that my siblings might then get access to extra tuition or even private schooling, private universities, and kind of an upskilling of the African continent. And I'd love to see more of it. But ultimately, that's kind of the way Africa's doing our financial inclusion. We kind of going out, working hard, sending money back home. And, particularly, I've got a lot of friends in the that are Black, that are Indian, and the concept of this, the Black tax, it's something we can't talk away from. A lot of my friends that are now turning 40, they're not only having to worry about their retirement in another 35 years' time, they actually are obligated as part of their cultural being to cover the retirement of their parents. So their parents are now hitting, 60, stopping working, and it's an expectation that the children will take care of their parents. I love that idea. I think it's, although it places a burden to an extent on kind of the next generation, I'm very fortunate in that I've been able to move my in-laws to live very close to my children. So my children have the ability to run over to their grandparents, to have a different dynamic to life. And I think forgetting about the kind of financial obligation, I think it's bringing Africa to exactly what Africa is all about. This concept of Ubuntu, this concept of togetherness, that we as a generation are doing it not just for us, the generation after us, the generation that came before us. And I'm particularly, excited, not that it was part of my cultural background, but really to bring that cultural ethos to my children, because don't let the color of the skin deceive you. I am as African as it gets. I was born here. I eat the food off the ground. I love this continent, and I have no plans on ever leaving it.
Yeah. Wow, you really said a lot that, resonated with me on a personal level, in particular, obviously the black tax, which is funny enough an upcoming episode on my other podcast. But to bring it back to this space, the black tax situation, I love how you reframed it as a positive thing, in terms of, it leading to us upskilling the next generation and creating opportunities that the previous generation didn't. But, I like to look at both sides of the coin. And with regards to black tax in particular, because it's something that my parents are, directly subscribe to, it affects them directly. And I can speak to it from the perspective of being
level.
indirectly affected, right? So while I won't necessarily be sending money to loved ones, for those of you who don't know, I'm originally from Zimbabwe, but I've been living here for most of my life. My parents would. So I would have I have a firsthand experience of how that would kind of take
that
away
impact
from our family, right? And that also speaks to something else I wanted to bring up with regards to the exodus of highly skilled and highly educated Africans moving, abroad. Again, I love that you were very optimistic. So I want to stay in that realm. But, again, looking at it from the other side, a lot of people have also said that's a big contribution to where the African economy is as a whole, where, we don't have those neurosurgeons that are contributing directly to the African economy. They are specifically serving their individual families, which is great.
Exactly.
But I think, in terms of financial inclusion and just putting Africa on a level playing field, I love what you said about the fact that we are just so diverse, in South Africa, where you will meet multiple different Africans, in one city. And with that, I would love to see us as a nation, as a continent, work together in order to really feel like, not even feel like we don't really need, the external investments and everything like that from the global north. I think that's what I was trying to really get at in terms of being financially inclusive. And I really wanted to touch on, my next follow-up question was going to touch on, in what ways specifically do you, Alan, see fintech playing a role in the drive towards financial inclusion? But I want to now bring it specifically to the YDPay space. You are as African as it gets. You guys are extremely passionate about the development of the country. And so as YDPay, do you mind just speaking more towards your ethos, in terms of financial inclusivity?
Yeah, so you've probably noticed by the way I talk, I love telling a story. Get the campfire, get the marshmallows going.
We are here for it. Yes.
Kind of the best and worst thing that happened to Africa was 2020. One day we were all partying, and the next day we went into mass lockdown. Local industries all of a sudden needed to move to online. Local, office workers, and we see it in some of the biggest financial sectors, districts globally, but particularly in Africa, where businesses have realized they don't need 200 people to come to the office every day. You can kind of come in once or twice a week. I've been fortunate that I've been able to work from home for a couple of years. But what this meant to Africa is somebody working in, a simple online or a job that they could perform at home, a software developer, all of a sudden realized, I actually don't need to work for a local company. All of a sudden, I can apply my skills remotely. I can actually, have a job for a European company. I don't need to leave home. I don't need to, in fact, I can sell my car. But the biggest challenge that worker would have is the companies that are hiring Africans remotely is they don't want to worry about what the African currency is doing. They don't want to worry about Kenyan shillings. They have a market where a developer will earn, say, 2,000 or 3,000 euros a month. They want to pay 2,000-3,000 euros a month. So that is exactly what YDPay has allowed anyone in Africa to be able to set up. Obviously, there's a lot of talk of sending money, to Africa, but we built an ecosystem that allows the ability to receive money in Africa. So as a worker or a remote worker sitting in Africa, I'm able to register on the YDPay platform, create a profile, and send that unique payment link to the company I'm working for. And they can pay me in a direct bank transfer, and it would be a local transfer, euro to euro. They could pay me with their corporate debit or credit card and earn Voyager miles on that. Or if they're in the blockchain layer, they could pay me in Bitcoin, and then I would receive my local currency in the exact same way as if I was working for a local entity. So particularly YDPay, the fintech space, it hasn't just allowed for the globalization of Africa, it's really brought globalization to Africa. And we're seeing a significant shift on the African continent, call it centers of excellence being established. South Africa's been known for a long time to be quite a good outsourced, call it telemarketing or call center operations. We have very similar hours to the European continent. And more importantly, our language, English, is well understood. And mainly as a result, because so many South Africans are living in the UK, call it the Afrikaans accent or the Cape Townian accent is quite well spoken there. So, they can, it's almost become part of the London culture. And so, we've seen Kenya, a significant boost to their software development ecosystems. The universities are great. But with that globalization, it means that the concept of a digital university is also coming out, where I can register for a university in the US. YDPay once again allows that ecosystem where I can pay them in US dollars. I don't have to worry about trying to create a SWIFT payment. I don't have to worry about the fees. I don't have to worry about the tracking, because ultimately a third party does all that management for me. And that's really where the YDPay focus has really happened. And we're particularly excited about some of the journeys that we're seeing on our ecosystem at the moment, really bringing a centralized payment system to Africa for the first time.
Love to hear it, honestly. And I feel like, on that note of bringing globalization to Africa, that would be the perfect place to take a little bit of an ad break to hear from our sponsors, YDPay. We will be right back shortly. Do not go anywhere. With over 15 years experience in African solutions, YDPay sources the best rates without hidden fees, all while ensuring that your data is secured and protected within their global technology stack. Built with the best-of-breed technology solutions with inbuilt compliance, banking, and reporting frameworks, YDPay's service-based framework provides multi-currency pay-in and pay-out solutions for both fiat and blockchain solutions. Getting started is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Register on the YDPay platform, upload your identity and residential documents, and voila, you're ready to send and receive payments in 40 currencies. Sending and receiving money has never been this quick and easy. So what are you waiting for? Start transacting today. This message is sponsored by YDPay, the safest and easiest way to connect with Africa. Now, back to the show. And we are back. So, still sticking with the, notion of financial inclusivity within the African space. I mean, it's no secret that Africa is a developing continent, right? So fintech has been advancing in ubiquity and sophistication. However, some underserved populations do not have as much access to technology and infrastructure. You were already talking about how there are so many rural areas where, they don't have that access to the internet and so forth. So what does the fintech industry do to address this?
Ooh, wow. So yeah, once again, it's going back to our earlier conversation is ultimately around greed.
Yeah.
So many of the fintech providers, and in fact, almost all of them, there's a few out there that have great values that we've partnered with and we've worked with. But ultimately, the fintech is all about a gap in the market, seeing something that hasn't been done before, particularly in Africa, throwing a whole lot of darts at a board and seeing what sticks. But financial technology, fintech, it's the same as every other business. The only aspect I like to see about it is the ability to move very quickly and to seize those opportunities, to have agility in the ecosystem. Call it businesses built by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs, where, and once again, Africa, the concept of the hustle. One day we're standing at a robot trying to sell cell phone chargers. The next day there's load shedding and we're selling mobile charging docks. Fintech and doing business in Africa operates in the exact same way. Where particularly with YDPay, we just want to move as quickly as possible as that ecosystem really grows. And whatever that challenge is to Africa is around seeing that gap in the market, hitting that gap and building businesses out of that. And, once again, back to financial inclusivity is as we build this business, more and more Africans are joining us. More and more business partners are coming onto our ecosystem. And we're really seeing, fintech just being a phrase of what we're doing. Ultimately, we're an extremely agile business that operates in the payment space, providing unique services to the African continent. And whatever direction that takes us in, we're very happy to go down those roads, providing that we follow the local regulatory and approved legislation in each jurisdiction as well. But, that's what makes fintech very exciting, is every day is something different.
Yeah. And honestly, when it comes to, situation, ideas around infrastructure and everything like that, that's obviously out of the fintech space realm. So I love the fact that you are working with the challenges and finding opportunities in, things that could ordinarily be a threat to the business model. So that's definitely great to hear. So I want to wrap up on more of a positive note. So in, sticking with financial inclusivity and everything like that, what potential spin-offs do you see from fintech beyond financial inclusion? Like, let's pretend like we are already X amount of years into the future and we have achieved financial inclusivity. What would you say that looks like for the fintech space?
Yeah, so I think, obviously, not betting my entire paycheck on this because it's predicting the future. But I'd love to see a better manage globalization of the global resource pool. This is not just from a work perspective, but I think it stems from a globalization and cross-border of everything that is good about the earth. The ability of being able to hire people in Africa, the ability to be able to provide training in Africa, but also in the concept of building a model that works for Africa. So, I think either of us would love to have an MBA from Harvard. Neither of us have $400,000 to buy an MBA from Harvard. I think with the globalization of payments, the globalization of services like YDPay offers, I'd love to see that coming down to a localization of those products as well, where I'm able to do an equivalent degree or equivalent training completely online and have access to the same set of resources that an MBA graduate at any of the Ivy League universities would have, because that skill set, the ability to record a lecture, can 100% be digitized. And then I think that'll stem very quickly as connectivity grows throughout Africa, the ability to have skills outside of the continent being brought back in. So obviously medical is a big concern for Africa. So having the ability where I might go to a hospital one day, or even a doctor, and that doctor might be sitting in another country because they so happen to be specialists in an area of medicine that I need help with. So from that perspective, at the end of the day, there has to be an underlying payments ecosystem. And that's what I'm particularly excited about, what we're doing with YDPay, because it's not about aligning ourselves to a particular market. We are aligning ourselves with Africa and the global economy, and whatever payment technology comes out, we're in support of that, and we integrate that into our platform to ensure that if you're a doctor that wants to be paid via Google Pay in the middle of New York to do an operation to somebody sitting in the middle of Nairobi, our entire ecosystem can facilitate that entire transaction.
Well, that definitely, puts a positive spin on everything. And it makes me excited as well, just to think of how YDPay alone has been able to just contribute and will be able to contribute to, just putting everybody on an equal playing field. We've seen how money and access to funds really is the end all be all. Unfortunate as it may sound, money really does make the world go around, and being able to, not have to worry about money, like you were talking about, getting the Harvard MBA costing X amount of dollars. I would love for us to get to a point where, $400,000, let's say, means $400,000. It doesn't equate to like millions of rands, but obviously this is a perfect world, and there are a lot of things that are out of, our control. And obviously that is up to our world leaders. So on that note, I would just like to thank you once again for listening to FinTalk with Alan Walker and Lynn Marape. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into financial inclusion, and I definitely feel like this is something we will talk about again in the near future. But for now, that is all for this episode. See you next time.